Hi everybody, Professor Rad here, and today we're going to talk about a thing called the 5-number summary. So in the last video we talked about percentiles and how if you're in, say, the 70th percentile, that means that you scored greater than 70% of the rest of the values in the data set. So 30% scored greater than you did, 70% were less than you. So we are going to focus on primarily the 25th, the 50th, and the 75th percentiles in our class. And you'll notice that 25%, 50%, and 75% are values that are going to divide the data set up into quarters. So because of that, we're going to call these quartiles. And we're going to use quartiles because they're helpful when summarizing the data, and the technique we're going to use is pretty easy. So there are a variety of techniques that can be used, but the technique we're going to look at is one that's pretty easy to do by hand. So I said we're going to talk about the 5-number summary, so let's define that. The 5-number summary is, you'll be surprised to find out, a summary of your data made up of 5 numbers. Fascinating name choice here. So the 5 numbers that we use are those 3 quartiles I just mentioned. The Q1, the median, which is the 50th percentile, and Q3, which is the 75th percentile. So the first quartile is the 25th percentile. The median is the 50th percentile. And the Q3, or the third quartile, is the 75th percentile. The min, or the minimum, is the smallest value in the data set, and the max, or maximum, is the largest value in the data set. So if I'm kind of visualizing what's going on here, I take all the values in my number, or all the values in my data set rather. We've got our minimum and our maximum. And I'm going to spread them out evenly for this visualization, but remember that your data doesn't have to have like kind of an even density to it. We're just going to pretend to illustrate here. The 50th percentile is the one that divides your data values in half. So that's your median. And then half of a half is a quarter. So halfway between the minimum and the median is Q1. And halfway between the median and the maximum is Q3. So if you kind of want to have a rough picture in your mind of what these 5 numbers are telling us, they tell us how many, they tell us that 25% of the data basically lives between the minimum and Q1. 25% of the data is between Q1 and the median, and then 25% is between the median and Q3, and 25% is between Q3 and the maximum. Notice that when I drew this, the Q1 is halfway between the minimum and the median. So the Q1 is kind of like the median of the bottom half of data. And similarly, the Q3 is like the median of the upper half of data. So we're going to do a couple examples of finding a 5-number summary. Sometimes a little bit of trickiness happens, sometimes it runs pretty smoothly. So we'll see what happens in these examples. So we don't know what these values are, they're just monetary values. So we're going to find the 5-number summary. Since we have to find the minimum and the maximum, and especially because we need to find the median, that should tell us that we should do what first? So since we're trying to find especially a median, we want to make sure everything is in order. Okay? And that makes sense too to go along with this picture if we want a bottom 25%, a top 25%, and so on. So are our values here already in order? No. So let's go with the 40s first. So we have a 48 and a 49. Let's go with 50s. So we have a 6, 5, and 2. So 52, 55, 56. You've got a 67, 71, 73, and an 89. And just to do a quick check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sweet. All right, so when I go to find my 5-number summary, I like to find the easiest values first, so the minimum and the maximum. The minimum is the smallest, so in this case, $48. And the maximum is the largest, so $89. Easy. Next, I'm going to find the median. So the minimum and the maximum I find first, the median I find second. So the median is the value that's in the middle. So I'm just going to kind of cover these up at the same time, marching towards the center. And here it looks like 56 is the number in the middle. Just as a quick check, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers above, 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers below. So 56 is our median. Next, I want to find Q1 and Q3. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to think of this 56 as my halfway point. So I'm going to cover everything to the right of 56, pretend like it's not there. And to find Q1, I find the median of this smaller data set. Now, you'll notice when I did this that the median is not counted in either the upper or lower halves. So when I'm covering up part of this data set, I'm covering up that median as well. So I'm going to find the median of these 4 numbers, which brings me to the middle here. So I'm going to add 49 plus 52, and then divide that by 2. So let's see, that's going to be 101 over 2, which is 50.5. So since these are monetary values, I'm going to express this to the nearest cent. So we have $50.50 for the Q1. Then we're going to do the same thing for Q3, but with the upper half of data. So I'm going to ignore everything. I'm going to ignore the median, everything below it. And now I'm going to find the median of these upper values. So we find our way to the middle. Then we're going to add those up, since there's 2 numbers, and divide by 2. So we get 144 divided by 2, which is going to give me a 72. So for Q3, we get 72. All right, so let's do another example of finding a 5-number summary. If you're following along in your workbook for our class, I'm going to skip the next page and go on to the page beyond it. So see you there in just a second. Okay, so like I've said, I've skipped ahead a couple pages, and I'll explain what this is in the next video. So right now we're going to do like half of this example to practice finding this 5-number summary. So there's a note here, and it says when you're finding the first and third quartiles for a data set that have an even number of values, we're going to use a dividing line instead of a circling technique for that median. Here's what I mean by that. In this example that we just did, we had just a single number in the middle, that 56, so I circled it. In this example, we're going to have 2 numbers in the middle. So instead of circling them like I did here, I'm going to put a line in between them. And we'll see why when we go to find the different quartiles. So this says the daily high temperature in degrees Fahrenheit is recorded over the course of a month. And they put these values in order from least to greatest. So we start out with the coldest, and we move across the top row, and then we continue in the second row, and then the third. Okay, so these values have already been sorted for us. That takes out, does a lot of the work for us. So we're going to find the 5-number summary. And the first 3 are going to be relatively easy. I'm just going to cover those up because we don't need them right now. So you're going to find the minimum, the maximum, and the median of this data set. So go ahead and take a moment to do that. You can pause the video to work through. And when you unpause, you can check your answers against mine. Okay, so let's see how you did at finding the minimum, the maximum, and the median. So for the minimum, I had 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you're labeling your answers here. For the maximum, I had 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And for the median, I had 57 degrees Fahrenheit. So when I was kind of counting and crossing these out, in the middle row, I got the median was in between the 56 and the 58. So I put a little star there. You could also put like a little line there, but this star is here to represent the median because 57 is halfway between 56 and 58. So that's how I found that. Now let's go ahead and find the first quartile. Now, because this data set is larger, it's a little bit trickier for me just to cover up half the data because that's not how the data is organized. So I'm going to X some stuff out. Now, when we find the Q1 and the Q3, remember we do not include the median. We look at everything below it for Q1 and everything above for Q3. So that's why I like putting a line or a star here. This is representing that median value. So I don't use the star, but I do use the 56 because that's below that median point. So the 56 and the 36 are going to match up. This 56 and this 42 match up. 56, 45, 55, 49, 54, 50, 54, 50, 54, 52, and that's going to leave me with a 53. So Q1 is 53 degrees Fahrenheit. To find Q3, I'm going to follow exactly the same process, but now everything to the right of the star. So if you want to pause and try finding Q3 here on your own, feel free to do that. If you want to work through it with me, then keep watching. Ooh, golly. Okay, so, sorry, I hit my little setup here. So, excuse me, gosh. So I'm going to cross out this 58 with this 86, 59 with 77, 61, 70, 61, 68, 61, 66, 62, 66, 62, 64, and that leaves me with 63. So Q3 is 63 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so that's how you find your 5-number summary if your median is not a single number, if it's in between numbers. So the other thing I want to mention when you're finding a 5-number summary, these are some kind of like quick checks that you can do, sort of like reasonableness checks. So first, if you only have one number circled for Q1, that means you should also only have one number circled for Q3 because the halves that you're finding the middle of have the same number of numbers. So if you're doing your work and you find one number in the middle for Q1, but you find two numbers in the middle for Q3, that means something's wrong. Maybe you found your median wrong, or maybe your matching up was wrong. So similarly, in that previous example we did, we had two numbers that formed the Q1, and then two numbers that we used to find Q3. So again, these have to match up in like kind of that style. The other thing that's a little tricky, when you have a single number in your data set, you kind of close that up when you're looking at the lower half. In this case, we used the 56 to help us find the median and to help us find Q1. See how it's crossed out in red as well. And similarly, the 58 was used. And that's because we had two numbers in the middle. So the star was representing the median. So that's kind of like where the little pink paper would start to cross it out. And lastly, a good check to do is that your 5 numbers should go in order from smallest to largest. So if you are finding that these numbers are not in order, then maybe your data set was not in order, or maybe you made a mistake. So 36, 53, 57, 63, 86. These are in order from smallest to largest, so that's what we're looking for. Same thing with that first example we had. We have 48, 50 and a half, 56, 72, 89. Again, in order rather, from smallest to largest. So those are some quick checks that you can do to make sure that your 5-number summary is reasonable. All right, and in our next video, we're going to talk about what this nonsense is. Well, not nonsense, but you know what I mean. We're going to look at what these things mean, and in particular, how those things can be used to help us find outliers. So again, if you're following along in your notebook for our class, go ahead and flip back to that page we skipped, and then we'll come back and we'll revisit this example afterwards. So have an excellent day, and I will see you next time.